On the next episode of Talk About Topeka, we're going to be speaking with Dennis Dinwiddie from the Topeka Zoo about the conservation connection. Coming up, a special guest, Dr. Greg Rasmussen, is coming in to talk about the African painted dogs and tell us what we can do to preserve their species. We've also got a tour of the Combat Air Museum, an incredible facility out at Forbes Field. So many people don't even know that it exists. We're going to take you on a tour and make you want to get out there and see it for yourselves. We'll also be sitting down with Frank here, our studio production man, and we're going to be talking, he also happens to be my brother, we're going to be talking about 30 sentences from the improv field that you can use in your everyday life to live a happier life. So we have plenty of great stuff coming to you on the next all-new episode of Talk About Topeka. That's going to be Saturday and Monday nights at 8 o'clock and midnight on TV 2510. Don't miss it, or find it all online at gablocal.tv. Well, we're here in the Talk About Topeka studios, and we're going to start off with a topic that we don't necessarily think it pertains to Topeka. It pertains to pretty much anywhere, but I think it's very important. One of the topics that has come up, we have a new president and CEO of the Topeka Chamber of Commerce here, Matt Pavarnik, and in his article, when he was mentioning in the Capital Journal's website about being here, he noticed that people who had lived in Topeka for a very long time had a hard, lifelong Topekans, they had a harder time communicating about Topeka, and they were more harsh on the community. People who lived here less time, they tend to think it's a great place because they have other things to measure it against, but lifelong Topekans have a harder time, and I agree with that 100%, because if you've been other places and you see what it's like, you can certainly understand what makes it easier for us to live here. Just recently, Frank's in the studio. Frank and I were talking on our radio show about how my trip to Los Angeles, going there and speaking to a lot of the people who live there, just talking about the price of what it costs to live here and what you need to make in order to live here versus living in a place like that. And yeah, the weather is beautiful there, but how often do they get to go out and visit other places where the weather is beautiful, to take a vacation? And it actually allows us to take better vacations. It allows us to do that because we're not spending so much money on just surviving, on our rent, on you name it, gas prices, just craziness. So Frank, I wanted to talk a little bit about, I saw this article that was through the Thought Catalog, and I shared it on my Facebook page. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this because my background is in theater, and basically conned my family into becoming entrepreneurs. Because I've always wanted to work for myself. So being very young, having a theater degree, working toward that, we were able to look at show business a little bit differently. We were able to put the show into business and kind of get a different perspective on what it's like to run a business. And Frank, you'd say that our family's pretty much been set up for that, right?
Oh yeah. Since I was born, we've always been in the entertainment business.
Yeah, we have, and I think it is something that's kind of given us a leg up as we've tried to operate a business. Had we been, classically educated in business, I think we would have kind of been educated just like everybody else. But I thought that some of the things that I've used from my training in theater, this article discussed it. It was basically 31 sentence improv lessons that anybody can use to live a happier life. And I thought, these were some things we should discuss. So I'm going to go over this. If you want to find the list, you can find it on thethoughtcatalog.com. That's the website where this exists. But it's just some things that we learned, in theater and improvisational comedy and improv, just anyway, what we're doing right now, improv speaking. It's not easy, but when you look at what you can do to make it natural, these are some of the things to do that. But they also happen to be really good things to help you interact with other people and live a happier life. So I want to go over some of these.
Before we get started, improv to me is simply listening.
Yeah.
You just have to listen and then use what you have and go from there.
Well, let's see if that's in this thing here. Okay, we're going to start off real quick. The first one they have, the most important thing is to be truthful. Don't try to be fake. And that's in anything. Number 2, vulnerability makes you strong, not weak. Absolutely. Number 3, listen to the person in front of you instead of thinking about what you're going to say next. That's a huge one. A lot of people have a hard time with that. If you're constantly being interrupted. You know what I'm talking about, Frank?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I wasn't paying attention.
Proven point right there. All right. Number 4, say what you feel. Number 5, mean what you say. Number 6, nothing is as infectious as watching joyful people do what they love. And that is something we get to do all the time here on this show. Isn't that cool, Frank?
Yeah, I appreciate interacting with you through digital stuff, so I don't actually have to be in the same room as you.
Well, I think it's better interacting with our guests because so many of our guests, that's what they do. They do what they love to do. You can totally see that in the way that they talk about it. That's why it's natural for them to have an improvisation, interaction moment here in our studio with us because they're talking about what they love. And that's what makes it a little easier. Now, you start talking about things you don't love or don't know about, well, then that makes it a little more difficult to do.
Yeah, I typically talk about sports a lot. And so, people talk to me about sports, but it's just like blurs right over my face because I don't really understand it. But I have to look it up because if I actually say a term that is actually in the actual sport that I'm talking about, then they all get all excited that I'm actually catching on. So yeah, like I didn't know
You're
that
special.
I didn't know that there was a field goal in basketball.
Well, you know what's
Who knew?
really good? It's really good that those Royals got so many touchdowns so that they could win the World Series. Good job, Frank. Good job trying
I
to
went to a
educate the
Royals game
world.
this year.
I know you did. Okay, we're going to take a real quick break. When we come back, we're going to work on the rest of this list. Don't go away. Thank you so much for tuning in.